Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the In the 11 podcast. I am your host, Brendan Griffiths, and this is the show where we bring on those from the world of football to show you what it takes to be in the 11 at the highest possible level. This week's guest, one of the longest tenured players for the Richmond Kickers of the USL League One in the United States. His career has spanned from the Division I level in college to Division III, NPSL, made his way over to Israel for a little bit, and now has found a home for the past couple seasons with the Richmond Kickers in Richmond, Virginia. And I can't wait for you guys to check out his story. This week's episode is a little bit different. We have that interview is at the top of the episode, a little bit shorter than usual. And then on the back end of it, we just kind of have the update from me, because I know when I started here, I was sharing a lot about my story with football and all sorts of stuff like that. And I haven't done that in a couple of episodes in a couple of months, actually. We've just been having some really great guests and really great interviews for the past couple months. So we'll keep that rolling. However, if you are just here for the Luke interview, then probably about 35, 40 minutes in, I'll see you later. And if you want the whole clip, then stay on for the whole episode. But without further ado, and here's my conversation with Luke. All right, we are joined by Luke Pavone of the Richmond Kickers. And, normally when I introduce guests, I might say, a goalkeeper from this team, or, right back or center forward, right? And I think the unique thing about our guest today is I don't know if I can necessarily pinpoint, hey, this is the position that he plays. So I guess that's why I kicked it off with player for Richmond Kickers, Luke Pavone. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, no problem. And I appreciate that. Sorry, I'm just trying to sit up here, but I enjoy playing a lot of different positions. It's helped me keep my job as a pro. So I appreciate that intro.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about that, right? Because I think there's always the two schools of thought. Like, one is, let me just try and become the best soccer player I can be. It doesn't matter about position. And the other one is, no, I got to kind of hone my craft in one specific way and become the best at one specific position, right? To make myself invaluable for a club. Yeah. Kind of, obviously we've seen the way that you've gone about it, but maybe talk to me about some of the pros and cons you think of each method.
Yeah, I'd say we'll start with I like to start with the bad side first and then good. But I think the only really downfall to being versatile and playing a lot of positions is that, sometimes you're not first choice on the team sheet in certain spots. You're more of a guy that can put out fires, I think. But, I look at it as, I have a skill set that a lot of people, don't have. And I've always tried to take a positive twist on, hey, maybe this game I'm going to be playing right back. Maybe next game I'll be playing left wing. Maybe a couple games after that I'll be playing the 9. Sometimes I've filled in even as an 8 or a 10 to lock games down. So it's just, there's styles of play that you have to follow and game models that you have to follow at the pro level, whereas that differentiates from college and stuff like that, where it's kind of a bit more free flowing. And if you're the best player, you can kind of just be on the pitch wherever you want, but you have to know your certain role in each position for the team that you play on. And I think for me, I've just I've been lucky to have great guys around me that I can watch and study the game off of and learn new positions. And, growing up as a kid, I played a ton of different positions too. I'm mainly a winger, but at the pro level, I'm not the best player for, to say the least. So I've had to been able to, fill in other spots when need be. And, at the pro level, I can't say no, like, hey, we're going to need you at right back today. I'm not going to be like, no, I don't play that position. I have to do whatever my coach says. And, I'm all for it. If I've joked around on other podcasts and stuff saying, if I have to play goalie, I'll do so.
Yeah. And you kind of mentioned it there. You started your career maybe a little bit more winger centric, right? Or focused kind of in the attack. But if we go back to kind of go through the journey here. So born in Rochester, New York.
Yep.
And, went to, I see Churchville, Chile, Empire United, pretty big clubs and high school kind of reputation out in Rochester. And I think for some people that don't know, Rochester is kind of like a secret, hotbed of soccer and football in the country, just with the, the history of it. And
Yeah.
it's not one that people would really expect for a soccer culture,
No, not at all. And I'm glad you bring that point up because it's funny. Whenever I go home for about a month every off season, and then right back down south. But there's signs like all in Chile saying like home of little guy soccer, and like I always laughed at it. But when I go home, it's funny seeing those signs because they really do have. There's so much talent up north and in that area, but it's so remote compared to the rest of the country that we have to. Growing up, we had to bring guys in from Syracuse, Buffalo, Binghamton, Ithaca, just to really form a roster that was capable of being a top 15 team in the country. And that's what we became towards the end. So, I never even had to play academy growing up because I was getting the college looks that I needed from just playing for my club. And obviously it's a different model now, that was a long time ago. I'm 27 now, but I'm super thankful from where I grew up and the opportunities that I had. I played with some really, really amazing players in my team. Guys were going all these different D1 schools. Jordan Allen was at Salt Lake. We had, Liam Callahan, Alex Bono, who both played freshman. Bono still plays for Toronto. There's a lot of talent up there, and I'm always trying to tell people like it's a diamond in the rough up there, but it's a place that not a lot of people unfortunately want to be because of the climate and how remote and tucked away it is up there. So growing up, I had to travel south for a lot of my games.
So then how did you find your way out to UMass? How did that kind of recruiting process go for you, and then ultimately the decision that you made to go east?
Yeah, on my mom's side of the family, my Jewish side of my family's from Boston. So growing up my whole life, I was always taking trips, missing a lot of school to go see my family in Boston and stuff. So I'd always loved Massachusetts. And then I went to a camp, I think a while back, and then Coach Koch, rest in peace. He came to a few of my games, and I think it was at Potomac actually down here in Virginia or in Maryland that he made the decision to bring me into UMass. And I think that's when I was like a sophomore in high school. So it was amazing. I loved my time at UMass so much. It was a really good time in my life, and I love being around family, and I have a lot of love for Boston.
And as it looks individually from like an individual perspective, your freshman and sophomore years were kind of relatively successful in terms of how difficult it is to break into a Division I program and play right away and be an impactful player. So kind of walk me through what was those first 2 years like playing for UMass, playing at the Division I level. How did that play out for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the work really started before then. Once I had committed, I was like, I've always been goal driven and dream oriented. So, I'd set the goals with my family as a kid that I wanted to play D1 soccer. And the next thing was pro. So I really just, once I committed to UMass, I just became a fitness freak. I put on a lot of weight and muscle. Got as fit as I could. And I went into preseason just thinking, even if I'm not the most talented guy in this field, I'm definitely going to be the hardest worker. And, Coach Koch, he was one of those old school kind of coaches, and we ran. And I was always just, coming in first and stuff. So I think that kind of just started me off in a good way at UMass. And yeah, I started basically every game as a freshman and sophomore, and didn't have the best stats, but I think I really helped the team out. And then obviously I ended up moving to Buffalo. So.
So I think you bring up an interesting point there, right? Because we were talking at the top that maybe for some players it's better for them to try and hone in on one position, right? And maybe for others it's just trying to become the best player they can be. But I think the common denominator in all of that is you kind of have to hone in on one or two elements of your game and like really lead into those, right? Like I was kind of the same way as a player where I was like, you know what, as much technical work as I put in, I'm never going to get to the level that I really need to be. So let me just lean into the fitness side of the game, be like, all right, let me, be able to go for 90, 100 minutes consistently week in and week out, right? Is that kind of the mindset that you took going into it, maybe your freshman year of like, sure, there might be players who are bigger, stronger, maybe technically better, but at the end of the day, nobody's going to outwork me and nobody's going to be fitter than I am.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, my mentality going into it was just, I was, being raised in Rochester, New York. It's a very blue collar, grassroots place. So the hard workers get, they're the ones that get paid. It's a very hands-on place. So, I was luckily my dad at the time was a gym teacher. So I'd just go over to his gym every day after school and stuff like that, get fit. I put on a lot of muscle, a lot of that, and really transform my body into a way that I could compete at a D1 level. So for me, I wasn't really nervous about how good everyone else is going to be, or, playing in the A10. I was just more so worried, what can I do to give myself the best chance to show right off the bat from day one. And I went into preseason flying, and, the rest is history from there. So, but, also my dad passed away kind of right before I left for UMass. So that kind of gave me, once I got over, the whole grieving phase, that really, really pushed me to, make my dad proud and do what we had set as a family, the goal that we had set. And unfortunately, I'd have to do it by myself moving forward. But, that really drove me to keep pushing.
So what has it been like now to have the type of career that you've had and everything that you've done in the game? If he was able to see all the things that you've done now, what do you think his thoughts would be, or what would he say?
It's funny because I call him my brother Mark Howlett. He played for Bournemouth, and my dad coached him at Roberts Wesley, and he lived in my basement. We're super, super close now. He still coaches college up north. But my dad actually told him to not play in the USL for the Rhinos at the time because he had a family, and, we don't make all the money in the world. So I'm constantly thinking about it. But, I think he'd be proud that, I never gave up when things got hard. And I've always pushed through mentally, and just, I've stayed true to who I am, and I pride myself on being one of the hardest working guys on the field every single day, day in and day out, whether my name's on the team sheet or not. So,
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit before there that move to Buffalo State after, your first 2 years at UMass. Talk to me a little
yeah.
bit about what led to that decision.
Yeah, it just became too much for me at UMass. I loved the school. I loved my teammates. My coach, my freshman year, actually had passed away too. So I think between my dad passing away right before I had left for UMass, and then the Coach Koch, who had, basically become almost like a father figure for me. I was going in there, and he was almost like my therapist as well as my coach. So the whole first year was just really tough for me. And then when he passed away from sinus cancer, it just kind of felt like my whole world was coming down on me.
Mm.
And I wasn't doing great in school, which isn't like me. I was partying too much, which isn't like me. I was making bad decisions, which isn't like me. So I think my move to Buffalo, I remember calling Mark Howlett, just crying on the phone, like, I don't want to leave UMass. I love the school, but like the team's not doing great, and I'm not doing great mentally. And I just needed to be back around my family, which is, why I went to Buff State. And I definitely got ripped for it because it was D1 to D3 move. And, people were making up some pretty messed up stuff about me, like, oh, you got kicked out of UMass for beating up an autistic kid. And I'm just sitting here like, that is the most outlandish thing I've ever heard. My mom works with kids with autism and Down syndrome. Like, I volunteer with that demographic all the time. So like, how dare you guys? But that's just, that's just stuff you have to deal with when, you're a good player and you want to make it pro. So that's just, people are going to say stuff, and you just got to keep your head on straight.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm wondering if you can maybe shed a little bit of light onto, like, I think obviously your circumstances were maybe different than, other student athletes, other soccer players, right? But I think it's kind of a common thing that you hear a little bit more now of student athletes and just athletes in general, that they have all this pressure, right? Like constantly, there's so many things they have to deal with off the field, off the court, off the pitch, that then sometimes bleed into what happens in their actual sport. And sometimes it can become a little bit overwhelming, which sounds like it maybe got to that point for you. So like, what kind of advice would you maybe give to, a player that's in your shoes right now at a college and just feels like everything is like crumbling around them a little bit?
Yeah. I'd say number one thing that I've always, leaned on my whole life is you have to fail to succeed. Not everything's just going to be handed to you in life. Like, and if you think it's going to be that way, then, you got some tough life lessons coming to you. You got to work for what you get. And I'd say when you're going through tough times like that mentally, and, you're feeling like you're on that breaking point, you have to lean on your friends and your family 100%. I tried to, when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I would always try to keep things into myself and not really say much to other people and try to deal with it myself, just go to the gym, work harder. So that's how I've always dealt with my stuff. But it got to the point where I had to get things off my chest and talk to other people. And like I said, lean on my friends and family. And I think that's what got me back on track in my life to get to where I am now. And, when I went to Buffalo State, I think that's when I really, really pushed myself to become a pro. Cause I just, like I call it putting on the horse blinders. I was just like, I don't care what anyone says. I don't care, if I'm at a D3 SUNYAC school, like I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm going to do this for me and for my family because what I've been through, not a lot of people have been through. So I just wanted to prove people wrong and prove my family that, when we set this goal and this dream when I was a kid, that we were going to do it together, and we did. So
Mm. Yeah, and that time at Buffalo State is just filled with success from your perspective as well. I
mhm.
know you said you're the blue collar type of player, so I don't know if you're the type of player that likes to brag about yourself, but I'm happy to do that for you right here. I mean, All
yeah,
American right
yeah,
off the bat, SUNYAC first team as soon as you step in there. And I mean, you can probably speak to this and provide better context for our listeners as well. But like, I've watched SUNYAC games before. Sure, we can talk about Division One, Division Three, all that stuff. Let me just
yeah.
tell you this: it is not for the faint of heart if you want to go try and play in the SUNYAC. Like, it's
No,
not a
man, you
league
gotta.
to laugh at or scoff at or anything like that. But you came in and from day one, made an impact.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that because I'm definitely not one to toot my own horn, but the accolades are there, and I'll always have them. And my dad was an All-American at UB, so that was another thing that really meant a lot to me was becoming an All-American as well. That's something we got to share. But my time at Buff State was invaluable. Mark helped me out so much getting to the pros and helping me out mentally, and just this school was a lot easier, I'll say, than UMass. So I got to focus my time a bit more on my craft and stuff like that. And I was a workaholic. So, you know, I think over the year, those years I really got to prep my body for the pros. And then kind of once I've reached this level, it's more about, the whole maintenance side and keeping level headed and stuff like that. So, but no, man, I appreciate it. And yeah, SUNYAC soccer is not for the faint hearted. It's a lot of 6'3" Northern boys that just want to bang bodies and
Yep.
just play hard football. So
And and so that was kind of a question that I had for you, right? And you might have answered it already with the fact that you said you kind of put on those blinders, right, when you got to Buff State. And because I imagine, when you're in UMass, you're in an environment where probably there's some other guys that have similar goals to you that want to go
Mhm.
pro and want to do something beyond the college ranks. But I imagine when you came to Buff State, there's probably a lot of guys that are like, I want to play college here, and then I'm going to go and live my life away from the game, right? So
Mhm.
what's that like to have to kind of be in an environment where maybe a lot of people don't have the same goals as you, and you just have to maintain the focus on what your vision is and what your dream is?
Yeah, I think luckily Mark gave me a leadership role right off the bat, and I think that helped me out a lot with what was going on in my life because I got to teach the younger guys and help the other guys whether they wanted to go pro or just be the best they could be at D3. I really got to lead the group in the way that we wanted to and help everyone out in their own way, whether it was, I want to be the best student athlete I can be, or, whether I want to go pro or whether, I want to score X amount of goals. We were able to really come together as a group. But for me, it was just kind of me versus not me versus the world because I was the captain. I had to help my team out. But at the time, it was just, what can I do to help this team, but help myself get to the next level. And like I said, Mark helped me out so much with that, and my mom as well. It's just a really, really special time for me.
And as that time comes to an end for you, and you have, now you've got a degree in your hands, a couple years of college soccer under your belt,
Hmm.
the goal is still, the dream is still there. Let's go play pro. But I think for a lot of players, they end that last season, and if there's not that MLS combine that's knocking or the draft or whatever, they look at the world of pro football and they're like, "Holy shit! Like, where do I go? What do I do next?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What was those emotions like for you, or did you have a plan kind of in motion?
No, I had a plan 100%. I had my agent Pat McCabe, who's stellar group. Loved Pat to death. He helped me out so much with a lot of stuff. And towards my end of the time at Buff State, I actually was talking to Pat, and I was actually going to go back to UMass, which a lot of people probably don't know. I
Mm.
was going to go back to UMass to try to, and I even went back on a visit and I talked with Fran. We were going to work everything out because Pat basically told me, listen, man, like your best chance of playing pro is obviously coming back to UMass, playing D1 and getting drafted. And I was like, it would break my heart because Mark meant so much to me. My friends that I developed in Buffalo meant so much to me. But, at the end of the day, I had to do what's best for me in my career. And I wasn't willing to give up my dreams and goals just because I'm a nice guy.
Mm.
So that didn't work out because the NCAA turned down my basically wrote a letter because you're not allowed to transfer D3 and then go back to D1. You have to like take a year off and stuff.
Okay.
So we wrote a letter basically to the NCAA saying like, you know, what I had been through in my life, like my dad committing suicide and all this stuff. And I went home to be with my family. You know, I think it's time for me to go back to UMass, but they declined it. And that really made me sad. But then I just took my last year, my redshirt year at Buff State after, you know, breaking my toe my first game. I just took it and I was just, you know, I came back like 10 pounds of muscle back on me, just grinded out my redshirt senior year. And then just, I knew the whole time in my head that, you know, I have to go pro. I'm going to do whatever it takes to go pro. Went over to Israel, did all these trials, you know, went there. It's just such a crazy, crazy story. It's just too much. But yeah, I knew
one good one. Doesn't have to be the craziest, but give me one. You're
oh
in
man,
Israel, you're trialing with a team, right?
I
Tell
don't,
me something.
what kind of people listen to your pod? Does everyone listen to you? Like how, like, you know, how deep can I go? Like,
Don't worry about being too kid friendly, all right? The
all
people
right,
need
all right,
to know the real deal, you know what I mean? This is the whole
that's
point of this.
that's fair enough. So I was on a birthright trip in Israel with my buddy Barak. You know, it's a free trip you get if you're Jewish for 10 days. And then he has family in Israel. So we extended our trip a week and you get like a $200 flight back, right? It's like the best for you Jewish listeners. You have to go do birthright. You have to do it. It's life-changing. But so the whole time I knew in my head, like you know, I can get my citizenship here. I can go on trial places. So I was talking to Pat and I was talking to my Israeli agent and stuff and figuring out, you know, what can I do while I'm here to, you know, maybe get a trial with a team. So I went on trial with a couple teams. And then I was with Accra one day, who's a first division team at the time, which is, you know, Israeli Premier League is no joke. But I'm still on a trip with my college friend, you know, I'm probably 21 at the time, you know, we're trying to enjoy ourselves. So we went up to Haifa, and I'll keep this part PG. We had a fun time in Haifa, you know,
Yeah.
it was a late night and I got a text from Pat that night, like while we were out, saying that I was going to have to go play in a trial game the next day in Accra. And I was just like, so we literally hopped on a train that night and then went to the game that was in the morning the next day. And keep in mind, like the climate in the summer there is no joke. Like, and I played 90 minutes, probably hungover, but ended up just finding it in me. And I played a fantastic game. And between me and you, I can really never say that I played a fantastic game. I'm very, very hard on myself, very critical of myself because, you know, my dad was like that growing up and stuff. So I've always carried that with me. But when I got off to that game, you know, they were like, listen, we want you, man. Like, but you're not a citizen. We've already used up our international spots. So I came home, got my citizenship, took about 5-6 months, went right back.
Oh, okay. So in that 5-6 months, was there training going on? Were you, obviously I'm sure you're training on your own, right? But are you training with a team over here, or is it just like you kind of got to wait for the paperwork to go through and then get back over for the contract?
I was probably training with like the Rochester Lancers. You know, I'm always looking to, at that time in my life, looking, you know, do as much as I could training wise because, you know, it was my rookie season at the time, was going to be. So I think I was just training with, you know, anyone I really could. Maybe it was, you know, the old Empire Academy teams, you know, whether it was a local college team, just doing whatever I could do to get the touches in that I needed.
Yeah. And so now you've had experience up to this point of your career where you've been, you know, NPSL, you've been college, a couple different places, right? I'm sure most players will say always that jump though to the pro game is just different, right? There's a different feel to it, and there's maybe a little bit of some nuance that you have to kind of pick up as you're playing, right? Did you experience any of that, or were you able to kind
Oh
of
yeah.
fit into the team?
No, my first year, well, my first real pro season was in Israel with Hapoel Petah Tikva, but my owner got arrested on tax evasion, so I was only there about 6 months. So we'll call it a half rookie year.
I like that. I like that you also just kind of chuck that in there, like, oh yeah, he just got arrested on tax evasion,
Yeah, well,
which to most people would sound crazy, but like if you talk to people that have like played football overseas, they're like, oh
yeah,
okay, yeah,
nah, yeah, that
happens.
happens. That happens, man. And you know, Dimitri Seluk, you know, Yaya Torre's agent at the time, I was working with him too and stuff, and he was just like, yeah, man, like this happened. So I was talking to Pat, and I was like, you know, that was a really tough time for me, man. You know, I cried most days after that happened because I was, you know, last minute trialing for other teams, and I ended up like basically re-breaking my ankle, and then they were trying to get me to play after like a month to try to, you know, find a new contract, but the transfer window closed, and it was so hard for me. But then I came home and just, you know, refocused, went on trial a bunch of different places. I thought my career was over, honestly. was in Nashville, was in Kansas City for a while with both those clubs for a long time. And then ultimately after 3-4 months of their preseason and stuff, they're like, we're not going to pick you up. And that's the nature of the beast. That's happened to me with 2, 3, 4 clubs. You make it through all the trials, they keep you around, you feel like a part of the team. And then at the end of the day, it doesn't work. And then I landed in Richmond and I love it here and I've been happy since. So, looking back on all that, it's just been such a up and down ride. And for anyone listening, the biggest advice I have for anyone is, Mark told me once, you got to be like this as a pro. You can't be like this. And that's been the hardest thing for me, is there's so many ups and downs, and to stay level headed mentally and all that through all of it is just, it's so hard. And I think going back to your questions, what's the biggest change, I think was your question, kind of going from college to pro and all that. It's been, I think the rookies will tell you that it's the length of the season. A 10, 11 month season is demanding and you're playing every day at a high level. And, coming from college where, you're the best player and whatnot, everyone's good at pro, like whether it's MLS, USL Championship, USL League One, like everyone's there for a reason. Everyone can play. So you have to show up every day. And if you take a couple of days off, then you're going to get dropped.
So when you finally get back over to the States, right, and you're traveling through all those places, this is a common theme that I've heard from players, that they'll sometimes get brought in by a club and then all of a sudden they're 2 months in and they're like, is there a contract? Is there not a contract, right? Because you get in this weird state of limbo where you don't want to close the door on an opportunity, but at the same time, if the opportunity is not there, you have to move on, right?
Yeah.
So kind of, what were those training experiences like for you? And do you think you've learned anything from something like that, right? Like, I'm sure you wouldn't go on another trial for 2.5, 3 months again.
No, I wouldn't. I mean, that's something you usually only really have to do in the beginning of your career when you don't really have any experience, because, you're not known, you're not a big shot. So, now being in my 5th year as a pro, I'd hope I wouldn't have to trial anywhere else. But no, it's a thing that everyone's going to have to go through, unless you're one of the top players in the country and, you just get your contract like that, or you get drafted. But even with the draft, a lot of those guys end up playing, USL teams and stuff like that the first couple years. So it's a grind, no matter what, no matter what you're in. And I think the trial phase for me 100% was some of the hardest times breaking into the pros, because you're living out of a suitcase in a hotel or in a random place forever. It seems like forever, 2-3 months at a time. And you're surviving on peanut butter and jelly. You don't have any money in your pocket, you're pinching pennies. Shout out to my mom, she helped me out so much through that whole process. I owe her my life for that, like, because I wouldn't be here without that. But it's a really, really tough time for everyone. And my teammate Matt Bolduck, when I got to Richmond, I was sleeping on his couch in his living room for 3 months. So it's just, if you're not willing to do that stuff to break into the pros, then it's, I didn't have the luxury of just, hey, here's a contract. It happened in Israel, but not in America. So you got to work for what you get. And if you're not willing to do that, then it's not going to work out for you.
Yeah. And kind of based off your response right there, I think it goes without saying that you have to be in this just because you love football that much, right? Like, you have to just be addicted to it and love it, because those lower leagues, at least in the beginning, like you said, the salary's not there. It's not for the money. It's not for the fame. It's not for any of that.
No, definitely not.
To play the game.
Yeah. And for me, it was more so, I do love the game, of course. Soccer is my life. I've been working at this goal since, it's funny. My mom has this like chicken scratch writing from when I was like 5 or 6. And like, I want to be a pro soccer player. And it's like, just funny to, like, I'm 27 looking back on that. I'm like, I've really gone through my whole life just to do this, just to get to where I am now. Like, yeah, I got through school, I got my degree and all that, which I'm proud of, but like, it's always been soccer first. So
yeah, it's an incredible accomplishment for sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And it's there's times where you want to give up and there's times where you think it becomes too hard, but that's when I lean on, the things that have happened in my life. And as sad as some of the stuff is, it's like, it's taught me so many valuable lessons, and I'm not a quitter and I never will be. So, that's never been an option for me. And, any young listeners or anything, just don't give up. If you set a goal or a dream, don't give up no matter what. It's not going to be easy, but, do what you can to pave the way for yourself.
100%. 100%. And now you've also done something kind of that's a little bit unique, I feel like, for the USL League One championship level, kind of where, or I'll phase it like this, right? How many other players in your club have been there since you've been there, right? For all the past
Hmm.
4 seasons that you've been at.
Yeah. I think it's just me, Maddie, and Akira, to be honest. So I'm thankful for Richmond. I'm thankful for Rob Ukrop, Darren, Mika. Bulo was my coach who unfortunately passed away as well. It's just been such a great experience, and it's such a great city, and it's almost been a lifesaver to me. I still have my issues mentally and stuff, but you know, I have great people around me that help me through it, and I get to show up and see a lot of amazing people every day in and day out. So,
Mm. So it sounds like the family kind of aspect of Richmond is
mhm,
what has kept you around. Because
no
I
doubt.
know, in the USL, and you can speak to this even better than me, it seems
Hmm.
like that's not really commonplace for guys to stay at a club for, beyond 2, 3, 4 seasons, right? Whether that's they're trying to
Yeah.
move up or get a different contract or it just doesn't work out with the team.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think everyone's goal that's, either second or third division is we all want to play in the MLS, of course. But, you reach a point in your career, at least for me, where I've realized like, I just want to be the best I can where I'm at now. If another opportunity comes, then so be it. But I'm not the type of guy to, you know, mid-season, hey, I'm looking to go do this, I'm looking to go do that, blah, blah, blah. Cause I've had teammates like that in the past, and those aren't the type of guys you want to be around necessarily, and we have a
Yeah.
great culture here in Richmond. So I think just being the best you can be in the moment is a good way to go through careers, whether it's soccer or not. And then, if another opportunity comes that's a better opportunity, then so be it. But I'm never the type of guy, oh, I want to go do this, I want to go do that. We all have our dreams and goals. Yeah, would I like to play for Charlotte FC? Sure, but that's just it's not in the works right now. So I'm gonna do everything I can to just be the best Richmond kicker I can be, and I think that's what's kept me my job. Obviously I think I'm almost at 50 caps for him now, but whether it's right back forward, I'm just gonna be the best Richmond kicker I can be. So
Yeah. Yeah, and the perfect segue for our last question, because I know for anyone that's gonna wind up watching this, you can see the jersey that Luce got on. He's got a
yep,
game that he's got to go catch quick. But last night, Open Cup match against Charlotte FC, obviously a tough result, right? But I think you
yeah,
kind of spoke about before that little kid that was writing in that chicken scratch handwriting, like I want to be a
hmm,
pro, and now last night you have the opportunity to go and play against an MLS side in the Open Cup, which is kind of the beauty of that competition. Is
yeah.
there a moment kind of where you pinch yourself a little bit or just think about where you've come from and what you've been through when you're stepping on the pitch against a club like that where you're like, wow, like look at what I'm doing in this moment.
Yeah. All right, you're not gonna like this answer.
Is it going to be hell no?
It's the answer is not at all, man. Not at all. I think it still hasn't hit me yet. It's just last night, but you're so in the moment as a professional athlete, and there's so much going on. There's spots
Yes.
that I need to be. When the ball's here, I need to be here. Set pieces. This is my spot, and for me, I'm always trying to just be as tuned in and locked in as I possibly can. But yesterday, throughout the whole day, I was just telling myself, just go out there, enjoy the moment, go out there, enjoy the moment. But it's easier said than done some days. So I think it's, I watched the game back last night at like midnight, and man, the crowd we had and the atmosphere is incredible. And like, I was trying to take it in, but at the time you're as a player on that field, you're so locked into the moment, and you're so just like, it just felt like another game to me. I didn't even feel like I was playing again. Yeah, they had the class from an MLS side, but it was just another game, and it was just another day to just go show our fans that, why we're on the pitch and why they should be cheering us on. So, but I think as these couple next days go on, as the year goes on, looking back on it, I think, I'll smile back on it. And it was a really cool opportunity for sure.
Yeah, because I'm sure maybe someday somebody will ask you like, oh, who's some of the best players you've played against or you played with or
Yeah,
something like that, and I don't know, maybe you can answer that, but who knows? Maybe it's a player that was on the other side last night.
potentially. Yeah, they had some good players, but no, it was a really amazing experience. But at the time, it's like, man, for me, I'm the type of guy where I'm just, like I said, I try to be pretty focused, but I do like to keep things lighthearted, and I try to play with a smile on my face. But like I said, sometimes it's easier said than done for sure.
100%, 100%. Well, I know it's been a crazy busy day for you, but I appreciate you taking the time to share a little bit of your story. I know that people are gonna really enjoy it. So thank you so much, my friend, and best of luck to the Gunners in a couple minutes.
Yeah, yeah. If you're a Spurs fan, I don't want to hear from you. But
Don't
Brandon,
comment on anything once
yeah,
this
yeah, no,
posts.
nothing coming my way from that. I've had enough Arsenal slam in the last 4 years. This is one of the biggest games for us, so
Yeah,
I don't want to hear nothing. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
of course. Speak to you soon.
All right, bye.
Bye. Let's take a quick break here to talk about support for the In the 11 podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below the waist grooming. Their products are precision engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's performance package is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you, 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code 11 at manscaped.com. Now, if my math is correct, that's about 8 million balls. So listen, gentlemen, here's the deal. The Performance Package 4.0 has arrived and it is a game changer, right? I know we got a lot of ballers that are listening to this show right now. We got a lot of coaches that are listening to this show right now. And I'm sure you're saying in your training sessions, I'm sure you're saying in the games, we got to take care of the ball. Why would you not be applying that to your below the waist grooming as well? You got to take care of your balls as well. Luckily, the Performance Package 4.0 and Manscaped is here to help you. So first off, we've got the Lawnmower 4.0. It is the future of men's below the belt grooming. It's got advanced skin safe technology. It is waterproof. It has a 400K LED spotlight to get you that more precise shave. Say goodbye to the mess all over your bathroom floor. You can bring it in the shower with you. Like I said, it's waterproof, got the light, everything. No more mess. Easy. Done. Right? Same thing goes for your weed whacker, the ear and nose hair trimmer. You've got that proprietary skin safe technology, which is going to help reduce nicks, snags, and tugs. It is also waterproof as well. Now, when it comes to your men's hygiene routine, when it comes to your ball routine, yeah, we got to talk about it, guys, because you got a routine for everything else, right? You've got a pregame routine, you've got a postgame routine, you've got a recovery routine, but some of you might not have a routine for your balls, and you got to change that. So you got to get the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and the Crop Reviver Ball Toner. You don't want to be that one, right, that comes in after the match and you've played 90 minutes, maybe you played well, maybe you bagged a goal, right? And it's just an absolute jungle down there and you're trying to clean and it stinks and no. Gone are those days, right? And who knows? You got a special someone, came out to see you play, right? Maybe you bagged a goal, maybe you got a clean sheet, maybe it was your debut, right? You want to be ready because I don't know what's going to go down after that game. That's up to you. Now, with all of that good stuff that I've just mentioned to you there, Manscaped has also hooked you up because in the Performance 4.0 package, they have also thrown in some extra goodies for you. They've thrown in the Manscaped boxer briefs, and they've thrown in a Manscaped little travel tote bag for you to carry around all of your Manscaped products. So you're on the road, you've got an away day, you're on the bus, you've got something, and you're equipped to bring all of your products with you on the road. Time to take care of yourself. Your balls are going to thank you. You got to go to manscaped.com. You'll get 20% off and free shipping if you use our code here at In the 11 Podcast. Use code 11, ELEVEN, to get 20% off and free shipping. So that's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code 11. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. All right, and that's going to do it for the conversation with Luke for today. I want to send a big thank you over to him once again for sharing his story with us today and for being open and honest about, kind of his struggles, his highs and his lows, as he mentions in there, about what it was like going through collegiate soccer, what it's been like chasing the pro dream, and how to really stay motivated and determined throughout any adversity that you may face. I think that's the one common theme I'd love for everyone to try and continue to pull out of the episodes that you hear is that there's going to be a lot of adversity that you face because everybody's path is going to look different. There's not always one cookie cutter way to try and make it to whatever the highest level is that you want to play. And as much as you may follow a path, there's going to be things that are going to put obstacles in your way in trying to get there, whether that's you want to be a Division I player, you want to be a professional player. There's going to be things that are going to be roadblocks for you that you're going to have to figure out a way to try and persevere in the face of that adversity. And, as Luke kind of put those blinders on and see if you can figure out a way to still get the job done. If you have a goal, don't quit at it and still figure out a way to get to whatever that goal or that dream or that vision is for yourself. So I hope that with all these episodes, whether you hear it from a coach like Mike Keeney a couple weeks ago, whether you hear it from a former player, whether you hear it from a current player, whoever it may be, I think you'll find that everyone has a story that it wasn't easy for them to get to where they are now. It was bumpy, but the ones who made it, the ones who have the stories to tell, sure, they have the scars to show for it, but they also achieved what they wanted to achieve. They've gotten to that professional level, or they've gotten those contracts, those scholarships, those professional coaching opportunities because they stayed dedicated to their vision. They stayed persistent throughout it all and made something happen. So once again, thank you to Luke, and thank you to all you guys out there who have been listening to these shows. I mentioned a little bit in the beginning, when we first started this podcast, I was kind of sharing my story, right? I was sharing what I had done in college soccer, what I had done after college soccer, playing professionally, semi-professionally in different places all over the world, and I wanted to come on and share that story because I thought there was some value in it. And it is thus since evolved into not only there was a lot of me sharing my story, but there was a lot of me giving other players or other people in the game a platform to be able to show their stories as well. And that's why the past couple months we've had so many amazing guests be able to come on and share their stories about what they've done in the game and what they've accomplished and how they got there, what the roadmap looks like. And I wanted to take the time today to kind of just give you that update in terms of what's been going on in my career, what's the latest with football, all that good stuff. So I had started training with the New York Shockers, which is a team that's a semi-professional team in upstate New York. And we had done some off-season training with them all throughout the winter that started in I believe late December, early January, and then went all the way through to March when the team started training for their preseason. And that season actually just kicked off. Was training with them and was starting to enjoy it again. I'd taken some time off after last season, wasn't really sure what I was going to do, and there's a lot of stuff that I was just trying to figure out that I didn't quite know what to do next. I was looking at some serious opportunities. I was putting my highlight film together. I was, reaching out to a potential Costa Rica plan. I was reaching out to a potential Australia opportunity. I was reaching out to Europe a little bit again, and just kind of putting the feelers out there and reaching out to contacts to see what might be out there. And while doing all that, like I said, I was still unsure of, is this what I really want to do? Is going for another contract what is the next step for me? And I didn't really come to a specific conclusion until I kind of had a conclusion forced upon me when one day in training, I went to just close down a player who was about to take a shot, and I had both my arms at my side, and the player took a shot and hit kind of right on my wrist, like so on this wrist, on my left wrist, I wear my whoop. To time, I was wearing it on my right wrist, so it just hit right there in that spot, like right where that wrist joint connects from your hand to your arm. And I was in excruciating pain immediately. Could tell something was really wrong, and went down and was in searing pain. And as I started to look at my wrist, I could tell something was really off. I could tell that something was not right, as the bone was pretty much displaced from where it should be. Starting to swell up immediately, still in a lot of pain. Couldn't move my hand or wrist at that flexion point really at all, and started to put ice on it, but immediately knew I needed to go to an urgent care. And I've got photos of it and stuff. It essentially looked like, if I put it up here on the camera, it kind of looked like there was my arm, and then there was a valley here where my wrist was, and then it came back up to my hand, which, needless to say, was not good. So I went to urgent care and got it x-rayed, and the doctor, the PA came in and said, "So how did this happen again?" And I explained how it happened. Just got hit by a shot. And she's like, "Okay, well, that's surprising because it's broken. It's broken really badly." And by that point, the pain I was in, I was kind of expecting that to be the case. I was pretty doubtful that it was just going to be a sprain or something like that. And she said, basically, the bone that connects, so you have your radius and your ulna, right, that runs along your forearm, and you have your hand with all the metatarsals, I think it is, bones. There's that wrist joint or bone there that connects the two, right? It's kind of like a fist. And the way she described it to me in layman's terms was, if you think of it like your arm is an ice cream cone and your wrist is that ice cream scoop on top of the cone, my wrist had been displaced off. So the ice cream scoop had been displaced off to the side of the cone. And, if you look at kind of the inner forearm, my wrist bone was now dropped into that part rather than in that center spot. So she said, there's kind of a couple treatment options for this. The preferable one is to try and reduce it right now, so reset it right now and then place it in a cast, and then stay in a cast for 6 to 8 weeks and have weekly x-rays to confirm that the fracture is healing and that the bone hasn't become dislocated again. She said there is a chance, whether we get a good reduction or not, that you will still have to have surgery to repair this. So I said, okay. So loaded up with lidocaine, put my arm in this ridiculous contraption to try and keep my arm and my hand steady. And then she basically took the bone and rolled it back up into its proper place, and then casted it, and then took another x-ray. She said it was reduced well, but she said when she showed it to the MD, the doctor, that it looked like there was still a high probability that I was going to have surgery because of the fracture was not stable. And so then I followed up, and that doctor told me, yep, you're going to have surgery, and it's going to be a surgery that will require me to put a plate and like 6 or 8 screws or something in there to hold that wrist bone back in place. And then you'll be, another 6 to 8 weeks after surgery of a soft cast and then a hard cast. And then now is really, I've had it off now for 2 weeks, maybe a week and a half, of just the no cast, but I wear a brace when I do anything athletic. I haven't been able to lift anything heavy with my right hand for more than 2 months now. So that was the immediate kind of quelling of any plans that I had to, go pursue another contract, at least at this time, with training, because I was couldn't train at all, couldn't do really anything. After having the surgery, couldn't even really do cardio. I was only just walking for a couple weeks, and then as I started to be allowed to do some more cardio, I was doing jogging, but still hadn't touched a ball, and then was still coaching, but that was really all I was doing to touch a ball. So it was, any injury is really difficult. I think any professional athlete, any athlete at all, will tell you that no injury is really easy to deal with, and you always feel like they come at the worst times. I think mine was in the same light, it came at a really bad time for me because it forced me to have to kind of address my life without playing football. And that was not something that I felt as if I was fully prepared to do. I felt like I was kind of gearing up towards being able to do that. But at that moment when it happened, and I had that trauma of having this injury, and then I had to have a surgery on it as well, and then was in a lot of pain for a long time. I also just had that kind of mental pain of not really understanding what was going on and what I wanted to do. So on the flip side of that, it was a blessing because it forced me to figure out a life away from the game and to be able to be comfortable in that, or else I wasn't gonna be able to survive. And I was able to do that, and I was able to find joy in other things, to allow myself to find joy in other things, and to not put so much pressure on football the way that I used to, and to care so much about, will I play here? Will I play there? What will everyone think? What does this player think about me? What does this coach think about me? Like, I finally got to stop caring about that and just do what I want to do. And for me, that is some football sometimes, and sometimes it's not. But I still love the game. I just love it in a different way. And I think what's been really nice is it's shown me that this podcast more is something that I want to do on a more serious level. I want to be able to share the story of players like myself who go through the trials and tribulations of what it's like to become a professional, or what it's like to become a collegiate player. And I want to give players a platform to showcase their stories, to highlight their journeys, because I think that each one of them is so incredibly unique, and each one of them has this level of perseverance that I think is rare to find in a lot of other pursuits. Because what it takes to become a professional athlete, or a professional soccer player in our case, is something really, really special to do that. It takes somebody really special and somebody willing to put up with a lot. And I think why I want to continue to share these stories is because people don't understand what it is that it takes to get there, what it actually means to be a professional. And whether that be somebody who wants to go down that road one day, or whether it just be somebody who wants to understand a little bit more about those players that they watch, or those players that they see on social media, on TV, whatever it is. My goal here is to just highlight, as I said, and showcase the path that they've taken to get to where they are. As far as the strictly football side goes, last week I went to train with non-contact. So I did some running, I did just some ball work, some passing, stuff like that. I returned back to full contact this past week, and it felt good. It felt, so again, I know for those of us that are listening, you won't be able to see this, but there's still a lot of mobility issues, like with my wrist. Like I can't really bend it or twist it past a certain point. There's a huge scar. I can't even turn it around to show everyone, but there's a huge scar on the side of my wrist, on the forearm side, palm side, and it's kind of weird because it's kind of like this reminder each time I look down at it that, as crazy as it sounds, like that my body sort of just failed me that one time. Like everyone's blocked a shot in their life that if they've played soccer, and sometimes a ball will hit your hand, and it's pretty rare that something like a shot will completely dislocate your bone to the point of having to have surgery. But I don't know, it is a strange kind of reminder of one, how physical the game is and how things can change in the blink of an eye, but also just kind of I don't know, felt like my body let me down a little bit in that moment. So I think that's a tough mental hurdle to climb back over when I'm going out to training. I don't know what it's going to be like when I have to go and block another shot or block a cross or something like that. And to be honest too, I have a little bit of hesitation and trepidation when I go into tackles or try and be physical, because it's a requirement of the game. It's a requirement of defenders. But I don't know. I kind of like don't know where to put my arm, whether I feel comfortable enough, whether I feel strong enough to get stuck into a challenge and use my arm. So I think for those of you that are listening that have dealt with injuries, you probably have dealt with something similar, where there is just a little bit of nerves, especially with something so serious where you have to have a surgery. It's like, do I trust that going back onto the field and doing what I do, that I'm going to be safe, that I'm not going to get hurt again? I've had fun. I've had fun playing footy these past 2 weeks and having a kickabout, really. Like, I like to be competitive. I like to be my best when I step on the field, but I'm not beating myself up the way that I used to about every little detail, about every action, about every touch, pass, defensive moment. It's let me go and have fun and see a lot of the boys that I know from the area that are playing, and whatever happens, happens. So I hope that was somewhat of an update for you guys. I just wanted to give you the update in case there was an episode or something missed in the past few weeks. It's been a lot that's gone on with having the injury and then doing the surgery and doing the recovery, and then also, trying to work on my computer was a challenge for quite a long time, because I really only had access to one hand for a while, and then even when I got the second one back, it was an adjustment getting used to typing with two hands again. So we're able to make it work best we can, but I am really excited about some of the ideas and the projects that I have in the works for the podcast. And as always, we've got more good stories coming your way, more good journeys from players and coaches and people all immersed in the world of football to show you what it's like at that next level. So I don't want to give too much away in terms of some of the projects that we got in the pipeline, but I will certainly, you guys will be the first to know as soon as those things are coming down. But through all of it, I know with even with football, like I said, it's been such an up and down journey, a roller coaster for me of these super highs and these lows, and I've tried my best to share as much as I can with you guys, and as much as I've felt comfortable enough to share. And there's some of you I know who have been out there and you've listened to every single episode and you've been there since day one, and that means an incredible amount to me. Every time I speak to somebody, whether it's via social media or whether it is in person, and they say, hey, like, I really like your podcast, it really means a lot to me. So I don't want anyone to think that I just brush that aside, because that means the world to me when people say, oh, I learned so much from your podcast. That stuff is really why I do this, and it's why I want to try and grow the audience, to be able to have that many more people get that same insight and learn, because not only are you guys learning, a lot of times in these conversations, I'm learning a lot as well, and then trying to relay that information to all of you. So in summation, I want to thank everyone that's been along for the journey, wherever you hopped on, whether it was from episode 1 or whether it was from episode 50, whatever the case may be, we're happy to have you now, and I really appreciate your support on all these episodes. If you can, continue to plug and pass the podcast, so to speak, right? If you know somebody that might be a good fit for it, share it with them, share it on your social medias, tell somebody about it, and that's kind of the way that the show will be able to grow and reach that much more of an audience. We'll be posting on pretty much Instagram and TikTok will be the main two, where we'll be starting to do a little bit more in terms of clips from the episodes and some other content as well. I know we've done, quotes from the episodes, we've done little clips, we've done all that good stuff. So keep your eye out for that. That's in the 11 pod on Instagram, and that's in the 11 pod on TikTok as well. That's where the majority of the content is. So go ahead and follow the pages over there. If you want to email the show, in the11pod@gmail.com, to get in touch with me, whether it's ideas, whether it's you want to be on the show, whether you want to advertise on the show, whatever it may be, hit me up over there or send me a message on Instagram. But I think that covers it for the update on me. If there's anything I missed or there's anything that you want to hear about, definitely holler at me and I'll see what I can do. But thank you for all the continued support. Thank you for being along this wild journey with me, with the podcast, with playing football, with doing it all. You guys have been there through the thick and thin. So thank you very much, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.